Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you all so much for being here this evening. Before we get started, I would like to remind you to please keep yourself on mute during the event unless you're asking a question. It's also important that you know that we are recording this event and it's also streaming live on Facebook. My name is Daniel and I'm one of the 4 core team members of the Ottawa Young Black Professionals. In case you're hearing about us for the first time, we're a networking organization focused on providing young Black professionals with access to mentorship, coaching, and knowledge sharing opportunities. We also encourage young Black professionals to lead, inspire, and create opportunities for others in their respective fields, and support ideas and initiatives that position our members and the community for success. While there will be an emphasis to support and address issues facing young Black professionals, membership is open to all Black professionals. We're an open group that welcomes participants and perspectives from the greater community. Before we go any further, we'd like to take some time to acknowledge that this event is being streamed from Ottawa, which is located on the traditionally unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. We express our respect for all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, and recognize their presence as the first people of this land. If you're joining us from somewhere else, please feel free to do your own. We'd also like to recognize that we're still in the midst of the United Nations Decade for People of African Descent, which started in 2015 and ends in 2024. This decade is an opportunity for us all to promote the significant contribution made by people of African descent in Canada, to secure concrete measures to enable our full inclusion in Canadian society, and to dismantle anti-Black racism in all its forms. Now I'll take this time to let the rest of the team introduce themselves. So I pass the microphone to you now.
Hello, everyone. My name is Natalie Tate. And so as Daniel just said, I'm one of the executive members of the YBP. I've been with the network for about 10 years on and off, as we've gone through various levels of, event sharing and information sharing and participation. Sometimes it was just about sending out the newsletter to keep you guys informed of what's popping in the city. But so glad to be here with this team, and I'll pass it back to Daniel.
So my name is Daniel Lachance. I'm one of the board members with the Ottawa YBP. I'm a marketing professional. So when I joined the team in the beginning of 2021, I came on board to help promote the projects and everything that the Ottawa YBP is doing, such as events, virtual events, or in-person events. And also, I'm also a co-host at most of the virtual interview events. There's also Keisha Charles and Sam Onyalo that are 2 other board members, but they're not in attendance this evening. Natalie, if I could pass the mic back to you to introduce our panelists this evening.
Absolutely. Let's get started on introducing our panelists today. So first we have Stacey Otley. She is the co-founder of CUREA, the Coalition for Unity, Respect, Equity, Equality for All, which is a nonprofit organization mandated to address systemic racism. She's also launched her own anti-racism consulting agency this year called SIO, or SIO Consulting, that offers anti-racism coaching to businesses in small and rural communities in Eastern Ontario. So Stacey, I welcome you to turn on your mic and video. We also have here with us Muhammad Ali Arfa. He grew up in a multilingual environment and he is a social worker. He is an academic and field experiences with young Muslims, gerontology, and youth intervention. He's driven by his interest in intervention and counseling work with people from all walks of life. And lastly, we have Virgia Davidson. She is a registered psychotherapist, certified Canadian counselor, and psychometrist and project manager. That's a mouthful, Virgia. She is the CEO and director of Strive. It's a mental health, wellness, and empowerment. So knowing that she can be part of someone's transformation is what makes a difference for her. So I am so excited to have this panel here with us to talk about addressing the work-life imbalance, keeping, happiness and sanity in the workplace and in your workspace. So we have a lot of questions for you guys today, and we're just gonna jump right in. So Stacy, we're gonna get started with you. How about you just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're passionate about keeping that work-life balance?
So thank you so much, everyone. Hello, good evening. So happy to be here. So my name is Stacy Otley, and I'm a first-generation Afro-Caribbean. I was born and raised in Montreal. I moved around a bit in Ontario, so I've lived in quite a few cities, and usually when I move, it's because it's for a better employment opportunity. So I decided to recently settle in Ottawa, so very happy to be in Ottawa. So work-life balance. I think having a work-life balance is about caring for your mental health. And I think caring for your mental health should be as important as your physical health. So making sure that you have that work-life balance is like essential. I don't think people should work themselves into, an early grave, or cause yourself burnout or anything like that. And when we say work-life balance, it's not just like not working and just chilling, but doing things that brings you joy. So that's an important part of like work-life balance and taking care of your mental health and self-care. So for me, making that a priority is really important to me.
Great. Next, we'll go with Muhammad Ali. Tell us a bit about yourself and also your interest in intervention as it pertains to the work-life balance.
So thank you for inviting me tonight, and hello, everyone. And so, yeah, I'm a second-generation immigrant from both parents from Tunisia, North Africa. I'm a registered social worker, been doing so since 2016. I have a background in psychology and specialty more in gerontology, so study of aging. And my interest for work-life balance comes really from my career path in education. I'll start with education. I mean, having immigrant parents, education was put at the front seat. My mental health wasn't much a priority, not because they didn't care about it, but because they didn't know about it. So it was getting the good grades, getting those diplomas, that's going to make me go further in life. And then when I got into studying university, CEGEP, all that, I got into mental health, therapy, counseling, psychology, getting to know more about this field. And on my side personally, why work-life balance is very important is I'm part of the 30% of healthcare workers who burnt out this year. I'm open about it, have to normalize it, and discussing about it. I went out for 5 months, unfortunately, due to the burnout. So it's an important subject to me, dear to my heart, and for my personal life, because during those 5 months and the past year, I learned more about myself, my goals in my life, my priorities, and learned as well what techniques for my mental health and my self-worth, so that I can bring it forward to other patients later on, and friends, families, and whomever.
No, that's really good. Thank you for that, Muhammad Ali. I'm going to pass it over now to Virgia and ask, you work as a mental health trainer and strategist. So if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and then also the importance you see in that intersection between mental health and work-life balance.
Thank you, Natalie. It's really a pleasure to be here. And thank you, Daniel. It's really a passion of mine. Just a little bit about myself. I am a mental health clinician. I've been in the field for over 10 years. I started off working with individuals and groups, and now I work with organizations. So growing up, I had a lot of challenges with mental health, anxiety. I didn't even know it was a mental health challenge. I just thought this is just the way things are. But I had a curiosity to know, why am I feeling this way? Is this really how life should be? And the more I began to learn is the more I fell in love with mental health. And this is why I do what I do, to teach healthier habits, not the grandiose things, but just the everyday things that we can do to make our lives better. And when it comes to mental health and work-life balance, we can't have one without the other, because even if we say we don't need to take care of our mental health, it will spill over in different areas of your life. It will affect your productivity, it will affect your satisfaction, your motivation, everything you do. And I've actually experienced both sides, when you're not feeling well and you're having to work versus feeling well and having kind of that spark again and wanting to do what you do. And it's very different. So it's so important to me to spread the word so we can be resilient as a community. So thank you.
Great. I'm going to go back to you, Stacy. You founded Curia to address systemic racism. How does systemic racism affect us in the workplace, and what are the steps we can take to cope?
Thank you for that, Daniel. So, there are many ways that we're affected, but I'd like to touch on microaggressions, which is a common form in the workplace, and something that I've experienced as well. We all know that microaggression, can be like a brief, and it could be a daily occurrence. It could be stereotyping, insensitive language, jokes, behaviors, and it definitely affects our mental health. So when I was thinking about this question, like ways that we can cope, or, centering your values in everything that you do as much as you can. Calling in instead of calling out. So calling out behaviors that make you feel that you feel are demeaning, or that are demeaning, really, because that's what it is. You're identifying the behavior that is actually demeaning, offensive, inappropriate. And when you identify the behavior with the person, that opens a space for dialogue, as opposed to saying you are, what you said is, what you did is, racist or offensive, or whatever the case may be. And trying to bring those conversations into the workplace to try to create positive change where you work. When people, it is hard. I'm not going to say that it's easy. Okay. It's absolutely hard. But it's something that I feel it's necessary to normalize, like how we need to normalize conversations of mental health. Well, kind of linking it, like these behaviors are offensive and it makes me feel this way, and it impacts your mental health, and just opening up that dialogue. Therapy is going to be huge. I absolutely suggest therapy. Working in an environment where you're a victim of microaggressions is very hard. It's very draining. So you have to take care of yourself. So not everyone has the luxury of having access to therapy, being able to afford it, or having an employee assistance program. There are free community resources, but it's possible that there might be some long wait times because they're free. So of course, there's going to be a lot of people accessing them. So even it means calling a distress line, which is a free service that you can access fairly quickly in an emergency, like the Ottawa Distress Line. Just little things like that is a way that you can cope. So yeah, so I would just say that, like, in terms of coping, of course, trying to bring in those conversations and create positive change in your own workspace, but also making sure that you're supported outside of work, and that you're caring for yourself outside of work, and that you're connected to some type of purpose outside of work, so that it doesn't swallow you.
No, I totally agree. And thank you so much for that, Stacey. I know I shared with you guys earlier, one of the reasons why, YBP wanted to have this conversation was, a previous event that we had where one of the panelists was saying that, if she's in a position at work, she knows she can leave. It's like she doesn't need to stay, she doesn't have to stay. It's because of the way she's positioned herself. And so a lot of those suggestions that you offered are really good suggestions to share with people. And, you know, I was talking to her afterwards. I had to follow up. So I was like, how do you do that? How do you, like, you know, put yourself in a position where you can bounce if you need to, right? Because, you know, some of these workplaces, sometimes you can find yourself in a position where it's really toxic, right? And so definitely, I want to just, you know, elevate what you were saying about having like a group or people, trusted people in your corner that you can talk to. And I know, like, within my place of work, there are different advisory committees that to, and that you can provide comments and feedback and things like that, so that they can raise it up to a higher level, so that, you know, they can talk to people in HR and they can provide those suggestions and things like that. So there are a few things of coping, but I think it's so important, like, as you said, to have a trusted circle that you can, you know, get some feedback from. So I'm going to swing it over to Muhammad Ali now, and just want to know, like, given your experiences with all age groups, what commonalities have you observed when it comes to mental health? And does that provide us a way to help deal with it more effectively?
So I too had to reflect on that question when it was provided to me. I split it in sections, so if I may. The first thing I would say is immigration status and forced migration. Whether someone be 9 years old or 90 years old, one status in Canada will have an impact on the rest of their lives. And I've noticed that whether they be young or older, and from my experience, and I mean, research has shown as well, there's always a feeling of not belonging, distress, loss of identity. You lose your reference points, you lose, even if you have a community of, let's say in my case, other North Africans, but it's not the same experience. They don't all have the same background, the same story, the same reasons for why they came into the country. So I've noticed that. I mean, the government of Canada has a great study on mental health and well-being with many years of studies. And I mean, it's very interesting because unsurprisingly, skilled and highly educated immigrants reported higher stress levels than immigrants of Western European countries. And in regards to age and specifically, I've noticed as well, so not just young, but young adults, so 35, 40, and 4-year-olds, are more likely to report emotional problems than younger immigrants that are 20 and 34-year-olds in this research. And I've noticed it as well when I'm working, when I was an outreach worker, the fact that the younger ones were able to, you know, learn the language, start to learn the system, get into it. It does take time and it will last. It will go, it might trickle down to the next generation, but there's a little bit of distress. But there is also some positive, all depending on if they have the privilege of having employment, transportation, where they live, who are the resources, reason for why they came to Canada. The second point I'd have to say, COVID-19, the pandemic, I've noticed commonalities with the younger, the elderly. It's not surprising it took a pandemic to finally realize that even though billions of dollars were invested in healthcare prior, the elderly were always neglected and never the priority in our healthcare system. Simultaneously, we realized that people of color, our frontline workers, are angels, our nurses, they are more affected by the pandemic in the workplace. Personal life and I'd say systemic racism shine the light on racist policies that BIPOC, BIPOC lost their earnings, had to drop out of school, their jobs, and lost family members at a higher rate than their Caucasian counterparts. And balancing your life and personal life affects the whole family, COVID-19. So even working from home, not everyone had that opportunity. Some people had, you know, frontline works, they have to balance different jobs, whether it be, and also another issue as well is transportation in the same subject, balancing different jobs. Transportation, you need to go on the bus, and a lot of youth and a lot of adults are actually on the bus most of the day, like most of the time, and it's not easy, and it takes a toll on one's health as well, transportation. I'd move to another point as well. I'd say work stress, whether they be older or younger, we tend to see stress as a consequence, but I'd say a culture. Where do we find ourselves most of our days? I'd say at work. So the bond between stress, work, and wellness has never been as close And there's such a big disconnect. And just like was mentioned, we need to have those microaggressions, those conversations. We need to find a way at work to break that in a way and to make ourselves better and to discuss about it as well. And mental health is not just a temporary issue. You can get a little YouTube video from HR saying, hey, do this exercise video. And that's not what we need. Whether they be youth or younger adults just like us or any great age groups. And mature workers, they hit a glass ceiling. Being recognized in the workplace, same value as counterpart, having your voice and concerns heard is difficult. But I'd say on a positive note, if I may, I see creative minds just like tonight, creative minds coming together, initiatives, policies that are changing the way we are prioritizing our work-life balance. And we've seen an increasing amount of people change careers, getting into a second career, especially older adults. I'd say taking the lead for people of color is what they need to do. We take the lead, but we also need anti-oppression forums at work. It's always forums about anti-racism, but anti-oppression, because I look at the video and this might sound silly, but I'm like, I'm the one who you're talking about, but I'm taking this, I have to take this course. And I'm like, I'm the one being microaggressed against. It's the other way around. It should be all of us. We all have our biases. And forums like tonight, as I mentioned, mentorships, just like Ottawa Young Black Professionals is offering, and networking is very important.
Okay. Next question is going to be for you, Virgia. On your LinkedIn profile, it says there's no health without mental health. So can you tell us, what are the negative repercussions of neglecting your mental health, and providing some examples if you have some?
Awesome. Thank you for that. Before I answer that question, I just wanted to chime in on what Stacy and Muhammad Ali said. You know, when it comes to microaggressions, at times when we experience it, we are confused because we don't know if it's real or if it's not real. And it's really interesting because when we experience that, it actually hits the same center in the brain as pain. So when that's triggered, we actually need to talk about it because it becomes a traumatic experience. So it's awesome that both of you mentioned the importance of belonging, the importance of having that community to talk to. So when it comes to mental health, and if we're not taking care of our mental health, you know, the repercussions are, unfortunately, when we say no to our mental health, we open the door to having mental illness. And it can lead to depression. It could lead to anxiety. Extreme cases, it could lead to psychosis, so many things. Because when we have stress building up in our lives and we're not doing anything about it, it has to go somewhere. So that's the reason why there's no health without mental health, because as I said earlier, if we neglect it, it's going to spill over in different areas. So I actually had a client that came to me after about 6 months of just not feeling like himself. And when he came to me, I was shocked at how accomplished he was. I was like, oh my gosh, wow, how does someone even accomplish so many things in such a short period of time? And then we got talking and I realized, okay, where's the balance, right? The goal of pushing. And it brought him to the point where he did hit burnout. He did hit the point where he didn't feel safe leaving his house because he didn't know if the traumatic experiences that he had from the past were just going to trigger him. Because unfortunately, he had an episode at work that he was experiencing a panic attack from a past memory he didn't even know existed. So he's like, I don't want to do that again. I don't want to be in the same space as other people if I'm going to experience this. Am I safe? Am I well? So he had all these questions. And as we worked together, we kind of went back to what are the triggers? What's the pattern? What's the reason behind why he keeps on pushing himself the way he does? Because if we don't understand our why, we will continue repeating the same cycle. So for him, it really, unfortunately, his body forced him to stop. But the positive thing is he was able to learn some practical steps that he can really overcome. And the awesome thing was his work. I consulted with his transition team to bring him back to work, and they didn't realize how much that environment was so toxic. They didn't realize how much these deliverables, these projects piling up, how it can impact someone. So that client, he was like, can you be there? Because I feel like if I just say something, they're going to think I'm just making it up in my head. Fortunately, his work was able to comply. So I say this because there's so many people that might not have access to a therapist or access to someone to advocate for them. So know your signs, know what your normal is or your energy level is. When you realize your sleep is getting off track, when you realize that your motivation is lacking and you're really dreading going to work, these are signs you shouldn't ignore, because if you ignore them, they can turn into other things.
I'm so glad you said that. That was like a major segue into our next question. And really, I think is at the foundation of what this event is about. So it's like, before we get to that point where you're seeing those telltale signs, right? How do we protect ourselves? Whether it's, heavy workloads, or we're experiencing microaggressions or just straight up anti-Black racism in the workplace. Stacey, I'm going to go to you with this one first. So I know that with your consulting company that you founded, you provide anti-racism coaching. So when it comes to anti-Black racism, what would you say are some of the priorities, maybe two, that Black professionals can undertake to protect themselves at work and feel comfortable, going into that space, living out their full identity?
Yes, such a good question. So other than knowing your rights as an employee, generally speaking, and your collective agreements and all that, there'll be your workplace harassment and discrimination policy. I think building confidence to be able to, I believe Daniel, Muhammad Ali, you said that about finding a second career, or someone said that, I'm sorry. But so having the confidence to seek out different opportunity, because the reward for being a hardworking employee is more work. That's what that is. So, at some point, you're going to have to set some boundaries. And if you feel like you can't, look for something else. The best time to look for another job is when you're employed. I've worked in employment consulting. I've worked in the field of corrections. I'm now in higher education. I've had 3 careers so far since I've graduated. So do not be afraid to leave. Do not be afraid to explore employers who are willing to provide a safer environment for you to work in, because there's always going to be issues at every place of employment that you go to. It's hard to get away from that, but some environments are more tolerable than others. So, having the confidence to want to put yourself first, to want to look out for yourself, to look out for your mental health, and not having that build up, like Virgil was saying, not allowing it to build up to the point where your body is forcing you to stop. And now you have to go on sick leave and things like that, right? It takes confidence to do that. This is why I'm using this word. You have to be sure about yourself and your ability to move on, to move forward. Another thing that I think is important, so this is more when you're in the workplace and you can't leave for whatever reason, assertive communication. Mastering assertive communication so that you can be, so there are 3 C's of assertive communication: confidence, clarity, and control. So confidence, again, back with the word confidence, believing in your ability to handle a situation. So calling in someone for some offensive jokes, behaviors that they did. Knowing exactly what you're talking about. Sometimes you don't know whether it's a microaggression or not, but you know how you feel. You know how this comment made you feel. So even if you're not sure it's a microaggression, you know exactly how it made you feel. So communicating that, being clear about it, communicating what you're trying to say in a clear manner, so that it's clear and direct, and there's no room for miscommunication. So again, this is what calling in does. The behavior that you did is inappropriate, or the joke that you said is inappropriate, as opposed to saying, you're this or that. Then it creates this whole other discussion that doesn't lead to anywhere. This is why I really emphasize calling in instead of calling out, kind of thing, because you want to have a productive conversation and not hit a roadblock. Because first you're gonna be like, no, I'm not that. Then conversation stops, right? But if you say like, this is what you did, or this is how you made me feel, then it opens it up for conversation. And then controlled. So, it's going to be hard to communicate something when your emotions are heightened. So it's good to take a step back, calm down, gather yourself, so that you can communicate clearly what you're trying to say. Sometimes when something happens to me, I'm so, in my emotions about it, like sometimes I don't know what to say, or sometimes what I say is not clear because I'm rambling. So you just want to take a step back, gather your thoughts, make sure you're communicating clearly and with confidence. And don't be afraid to repeat yourself, and repeat it every single time something happens, and drilling it in there. I think these are some things. So there's a lot of things that you can do. I think for me, these two have helped me in my journey. So this is why I'm sharing it with you tonight.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask the next question to Mohammed. I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, and it really drives home the fact that you have experience with people of all walks of life. And you said it earlier on as well, young to old and multilingual, for example. If you could leave us with one tidbit of information that we should all know about work-life balance, also given your experience, what advice would that be?
So just like we think about retirement as an investment for the future financially, we should consider physical and mental health as an investment to the future. Ongoing process. It's finding what works for us, trial and error. We need strategies that worked in the past, strategies that work today, December 8th, might not work next year, but we try new things. We need to try them. We need to move forward. We need to apply, different, we're gonna be moving with different challenges as we grow in our careers, as we grow as individuals. I'd also add something between both ageism and systemic racism. So this is just a little bit more of from my geriatrics gerontology background. Although they're different subjects, of course, we can find many commonalities between ageism and systematic racism. So for instance, systemic ageism is defined by Ontario Human Rights Commission as a socially constructed way of thinking about older persons based on negative attitudes and stereotypes about aging, and failing to respond appropriately to the real needs of those older people. Even though they're, as I mentioned, two different battles, systemic racism can cross roads with systemic ageism. And I'm seeing it in the hospital. Systemic ageism, the way that they're being treated in hospitals, and I got people of color that are also older, they've social economic imbalances come together, and they age differently. And I'd say the lack of policies in both age groups, whether they be younger, minorities, different languages, and they all go through stressors that are different than what, for instance, our counterparts would go through.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that response. And I see what you're saying when it comes to that. I definitely see what you're saying. I do want to follow up with that question though, because I kind of want to hear about your journey, and I know that you said you're open to sharing. So, just like when it comes to the journey that you experienced, what would you share in terms of like work-life balance and because of the journey and because of what you went through, like what are you implementing now that's helping you move forward?
Yeah, so as I mentioned at the beginning, I was in burnout for 5 months a year ago, last Friday. So I'd say I have to play on my own strength. I have to think about what do I want in my life? And that's the first thing that I had to work on. Who am I? What is my worth? And I need to prioritize my time. And I knew that I was going back to work. I wasn't sure, if I'm changing careers, but I rethought about it and I knew that I was at the right place. It's just the barriers and the boundaries that I was not putting. And I just mentioned, I'm sorry, I forgot who mentioned it, but it was a very good point. Your prize for working hard is more work. I think that's Stacy.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you need to plot some time, some personal time. It's not selfish to take time for yourself. Because if, in my case, I wasn't able to take time for myself, then I can't take time for my family, for my friends, for my own career to grow. I'd have to say as much as well, managing the time. When we go to work, I have a contract that says I must be from X to Y, so 8 to 4, Mondays to Fridays, but I would come in earlier or leave way later. Don't mention it to the manager. Try to get as much as we can. And then that would be one of the boundaries that I need to put in there. So I need to manage my time, prioritize. And I would say, I'd have to put high priority importance and low priority and importance, and kind of, you can put them in a graph and kind of prioritize, what do I have to do today? And I mean, in some jobs, we can't really organize that. You don't know what's going to happen necessarily on that day, or the second that you actually start planning, everything falls and it's all completely different. And you need to make your workplace work for you. Get comfortable at work, your workstation, the ergonomics behind it. I have the privilege of being in a place, of course, in a hospital setting where we do have people that come and measure the size of the height of our office, move our chairs, etc. But I'm seeing more and more people, work from home, so it could be just the couch, and that's not necessarily comfortable. It's fun, maybe, I don't know, I haven't tried it, to be frank with everyone here, but I'm not sure that after 2 years almost that's great. So it's really thinking about oneself, and as mentioned, and I'm going to put forward, therapy, counseling, whether it be a distress line, but start thinking ahead, because when I look back, I look at all the red flags, and I can see those red flags coming from June, and it's in December where it just all boiled up and just exploded. So those red flags that we need to learn. We need to learn how to read our own body, our own minds. There are patterns that can seem normal to us. I'm going more to the gym, I'm working harder, I'm eating well, but maybe you're not. Maybe your sleeping patterns are messed up a little bit. Sorry for my language, but you need to step back, look at what's happening. How are you feeling? You might not have words for it, but we have people who can find the words for you and with you. And I'd go with those solutions on my case. And I mean, to be frank, in my case, cognitive behavioral therapy was my go-to. It might not work for everyone, and there's a different approach for every type of person and every type of background, and what one is comfortable with, and we need to respect that as well as therapists. I have training in specific therapy approaches, but it might not work for others, and I need to understand, and myself, I need to work with them, and we give it a try, and we need to give things a try, and we don't stay in the same pattern. If we're not comfortable, just like Stacy mentioned, and change. Look, if you can have the opportunity and the privilege of changing jobs, look at what you want. Look in the now, later, and in the future. Invest in yourself and be comfortable with who you are as well.
Okay, so I heard a few things there. Some really good advice is, like recognizing the red flags. And as you see them go by, like don't let too many of them pass if you can before you start doing something about it, right? And then also like do some future planning. Know who you are and plan out like where you plan to be, a month from now, 6 months, a year, 5 years from now, and start doing that planning so that you can kind of insulate yourself so that you're planning ahead, you're looking for those jobs ahead, you're making those connections ahead of time. When you actually need them, everything's already in place. You're not starting from scratch, right? So yeah, so I'm gonna pass it on to Virgia, and I want to know from you. I mean, cool. Let's see here. Now there's a lot of titles going on here. So, you're a CEO and director of your own company, right? And so I can't even begin to imagine the types of forces that are bidding for your time, right? And as a Black woman as well, how have you throughout your career, beginning to now, how have you allotted that time and made that space for your mental health? And how have you achieved that work-life balance? So that you can stay, sane and happy where you are. How'd you do
it? Great question. I'm still figuring it out now. I'm just joking.
I don't doubt it.
Really, the answer to that question is really two-part. So you mentioned from, when I first started to now. So when I first started, I was the yes girl. Yes, 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 to the point where I wasn't really thinking about my own mental health. Because as Muhammad Ali said, if you don't know your value, if you don't know your worth, if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, yes, 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 you just sing yeses. But then what happens is your body forces you to kind of shut down. So I would go, 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 and then I would crash, 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 crash. Go, 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 crash, 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 crash. So in the beginning of my career, it was like, oh my gosh, like I'm always up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So understanding my why am I doing it? And a little trick I often use is if somebody asks me to do something, I ask if I can get back to them or can they tell me more information? I have an automatic yes approach. So I have to be mindful of that. So that breaks that cycle for me. So I can think about it, I can process it to see, can I actually do this in truth? Can I do this well? And it really took one of my mentors to point that out to me, that what's making me say yes? Is it, do I feel enough if I say no? Or am I trying to please? Why am I trying to please? So I had to understand that. And then later on in my career now, when I say no, I know why I'm saying no. And it's not because I'm the only option. Maybe there's a better option. Maybe we can work together. But then the other part is the strategies that I put in every day. So fighting for your mental health, it's really a fight because there's so many, each week there's other things that are coming on my plate. But when I have a challenging week, I always schedule a few days of downtime. And downtime, it doesn't mean that I'm not doing anything. It just means I'm doing lighter work. So being aware of your work schedule is super important. Also, booking mental health days. I've had to, talk about mental health days. Some people are like, what do you mean mental health days? That's fine. When's the last time you had vacation? I don't know. I don't need it. But the reality is, even if you don't think you need it, booking those mental health days, whether it's going to the spa, whether it's just hanging out with a family member, it really gives you the energy that you need to pour into the things that you want to. And I also, I don't know who said it, Stacey or Muhammad Ali, listen to your body. As I said before, I was crashing, going, and that feeling was not too good. I wasn't feeling satisfied. I was like, is this life? Is this adulting? this is not fun, you know? So the more I began to listen to my body, when my sleep patterns are off, when I'm staying up, I'm like, it's been 2 or 3 nights of me not sleeping well. What's going on? Journaling, talking to a friend. They're not my therapist, but they act in different ways to support me. Also, as I said, learning to say no, and then having different go-to people in different elements of my life. That's super important for me. So whether spiritually, I have a spiritual mentor, whether it's at the workplace, I have someone I could talk to, to be myself, whether it's, within the family, we all have interesting families. We know some we can go to, some we can't. So knowing who I can go to, who I can vent to, and then even my fitness. During the pandemic, being transparent, there was a time where I stopped working out. I was so busy and I was going. And it really took me going up a flight of stairs, huffing and puffing and saying, when did this happen? And like being able to jog. And I'm like, oh, this is hard. So I literally had to pay attention to the fact that I wasn't getting that physical health into my day-to-day. So it's really a choice. And then the other one is having people that can call you out, okay, that can support you, but tell you the truth. Because a lot of these truths that I realized, it was from someone that cared about me. It was someone that I knew when they were talking to me, it wasn't to put jabs. It was like, Virgia, I'm actually worried about you because you're so busy. Like, I haven't seen you in X amount of days. Like, what's up? So having these elements really helps me to stay balanced, because it's a battle, and I have to be mindful of my own pitfalls of, I like a challenge, and it's good to like a challenge, but also knowing your own limits is also important.
Okay, very interesting. I've got a question, but this one, it's whoever wants to take the question can answer it. When we look at the mainstream discussion about mental health, it doesn't highlight the reality and challenges of being a person of color. So I guess, what are the additional challenges when seeking help as a Black person? And what are some solutions you could suggest to resolve those challenges?
Well, I can go first if anyone wants to add later, but I'd like to, I think, Virgia, you gave such a good example that ties into this. So I think there is a challenge for us is sometimes thinking that we have to be on all the time, always doing something, having 10 hustles. If you're not always working, you're lazy, there's this hustle culture all the time. And, you need to set boundaries. You need friends to call you out, mention that you might be doing too much. um, giving yourself some time. And I say this as someone who's actually working full time and doing the nonprofit thing and like the consulting thing, but I have not been as active with the consulting. I've withdrawn from the nonprofit. And I'm setting boundaries more. So I also had to learn this recently because I was doing too much. So I have slowed my role down. I'm still involved, but at a capacity that I'm comfortable with and that I can manage. And everyone's capacity is different. Sometimes you do need to maybe pause a side activity completely until you can maybe get some counseling or something, right? And then come back to it once you have a better strategy, because the strategy that you were using that worked for you before is no longer working for you now. So I think we need to be honest with ourselves. I feel like I'm just using your example word for word. I just think that is a challenge for us as the Black community. One of them.
And I would add one other challenge, I totally agree with you, Stacey, would be relatability. And oftentimes, some people, when they see me, they're like, I'm so happy. I'm like, what? Why are you happy? You're Black. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's all it took. But the reality is sometimes in the spaces that we're in, we're not seeing this representation. So it might be a challenge to access it because you're like, I don't really know about, what it's going to look like. So one thing I would say, if you haven't seen it, try talking with someone that you care about. You never know what resources they might have, and they might actually connect you with someone that would be more relatable. Because I think Muhammad Ali said, everyone has a different style, right? I'm a therapist, he's a therapist. Oh, he's a social worker. And the way I see a client might be very different. And I'm not taking it personally, and neither should you. So talk to the people within your community because they can see a different angle. And also mental health looks very different depending on the culture. And that's really important because we might feel like, I can't relate because that's not something, like not everyone's into meditation, not everyone's into yoga, right? I'm not, I don't have anything against that, but I'm just saying, if this is the representation that I see all the time, I might think this is really not for me. But there's so many different things that you can do, like singing, stories, right? Like writing, artwork. There's so many different types of therapy. But if we don't have the representation, it makes it hard to jump over that barrier, to trust, I should say.
If I may add to the representation part, actually, I think coming from, university background and all that, I've noticed we're not providing culturally competent mental health care, to be honest with everyone. I'm going to put it out there straight up. Systemic issues in our studies and even knowledge of mental health is basically based on the same white person. It's like the generic, it's not us. It's not necessarily us. And we're starting to get there. We're having these conversations. We have amazing therapists that are, going to research, getting into the workplace. And it's only recently that we're starting to talk about mental health. And I mean, some languages don't even have a word for it. You're just ill. Or it's just how it is. And I mean, frankly, if I've learned anything is, we take pride in the sense of perseverance and resilience. So we've had longstanding history of racism, African Americans, Caribbeans, slavery, wars, genocides, refugee, misplacement. This leads to the failure of recognizing mental health disorders as a form of, we see it as illness in our cultures or in our language. And we need to break that barrier ourselves, but also the mental health workers. So that's one part, but I would also like to add the lack of access and resources for mental health. Not all neighborhoods have the right ratio of, X culture in this neighborhood to healthcare or outreach workers. They don't have necessarily the transportation to get to them. It was mentioned at the beginning, you don't have the insurance to insurances to cover for therapy. Yes, there are free resources, but they might take time, and it will be difficult for us to acknowledge it. People have many jobs, passing all day on the buses. Some people are, the caregiver or the main person at home is a younger kid who's doing the, legal papers for their parents. And this is stuff that I have colleagues that don't know this reality. I, saw it because I've met people, I'm talking with other colleagues, and we have biases, everyone, all of us. And I've had just like Radia, people, oh yes, I'm Arab Muslim, I'm happy to see you. And I'm like, we don't have the same story when I'm listening to them. And I'm like, we might get to some issues and some things that I will learn from them and they will learn from me, or they don't understand and we don't connect necessarily in the same background stories. But there's one thing that I find very interesting in regards to the mainstream discussion. I don't know, maybe because I'm a millennial or something, but on TikTok, I'm seeing these kids. I see kids, but youth talking about going to therapy, talking about it's cool. And at first, when I first saw it, I was like, what are they doing? And then I'm like, wait, this is millions of views. People are talking about it. Kids have mentors in school. People are talking about like going to therapy as if they're going to the grocery store. Like, oh yeah, just hey, I'll come and play outside. Let me just go see my therapist and come back. It's opening up. Social media is actually a very good platform, as much as it can be very toxic. As we mentioned, the grind is real, the hustle, 24-hour work. But I'm seeing younger kids and I'm feeling more confident that the younger generation is putting forward by dancing, by singing on TikTok, but putting forward mental health. And I find it a beautiful thing.
And if I might add something to what Mohammed Ali said, within the school, they're really working in a school. They're really pushing mental health initiatives, which is awesome. So this is amazing that, you know, we're seeing this, but there's really been a change of culture around the school, and to really normalize it and to talk about it without that stigma, which is awesome.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a really good thing, and I see it in the workplace as well. There's a lot more discussions about mental health and mental wellness and things like that. And but I do see that other part that you guys were talking about in terms of perhaps, you know, what's being offered, right, is not culturally either appropriate or culturally competent, right? So it is good and reassuring when you go into a space and you're connected with somebody who looks like you or has like a similar background to you, because it's like, okay, at least I don't have to explain this. You know, I don't have to explain racism to you. Because I've been in situations where it's like, you know, you go and you meet someone through your work, the you know, mental health offerings that they do through work, and it's like, now I have to explain to you racism and why this is racist. This is not going to work out. You know, so it is good to see somebody who looks like you, to at least hopefully get that understanding piece out of the way. But when you know, it can be pricey. So there can be like an economic barrier there for people. So when you are going through something at work that is, you know, anti-Black racism, microaggressions, that feeling of oppression or ageism or any of these things, so any kind of toxic environment, and you don't have those, the finances maybe, or even it's not available through your work, what would you suggest as a way of getting the help that you need? I know we've talked about a few things, but you know, talking to friends and making sure you have a circle of support. But is there anything else that you would advise people to do?
So within the community, there's a lot of resource centers that offer short-term therapy, at least 5 to 8 sessions. And if you are in crisis and you know, you talk to them, they won't say like, you cannot come to us. So there are different things there that can at least tie you over. I do think that we have a ways to go to make sure, you know, the plethora of services is accessible to everyone. But there are, if you call 211 and ask for your resource center, they will connect you with that. And also, I believe Family Services Ottawa, Catholic, I don't know why I'm messing up the name, Catholic something. They also offer free resources within the Ottawa community, and it's really cool around Canada. There's different branches of Family Services Ottawa or Catholic Services.
If I may add, just to that, whichever organization you call, even if it's just example, the Jewish Family Services, and you're not Jewish, but you just found their number, it's fine. They're gonna have someone who's gonna help you, at least guide you towards the right resources. And exactly, I just wanted to add to Bridget there.
Yes, and I'd also like to add, so in Ottawa, there is a support line for African, Caribbean, and well, people who identify as African, Caribbean, or Black. I believe it's through the Somerset West Community Health Center. They have a specific mental health line for the ACB community. And then kind of like what Virgil was saying as well, there are free counseling, short-term, of course, sessions like counselingconnect.org. It's free virtual counseling. So if you need to just get in a few sessions, I strongly encourage people to just utilize the free resources until you can find something more long-term, because at least it'll hold you over temporarily, even like the distress lines, as was previously mentioned as well.
And also there are lots of apps out there if you're struggling with anxiety, mood, or like anxiety or depression. There's Mind Shift. And within that app, it's a free app. You can, of course, get the paid version, which, of course, I guess they need to make their money. But there's lots and lots of tools and tracking so you can understand your thoughts and build healthier habits.
I'm gonna go ahead with I'll ask another question for everyone. As I saw it in the news, and I'm sure you've all seen it too. Ontario, they passed this new work-life balance policy for I think all businesses or company organizations 25 plus employees. Could someone tell us a bit more about this, and if they think it's a step in the right direction, or if they think it'll be effective?
So for one, it doesn't cover all employers. It only covers Ontario businesses with 25 people or more. So, smaller businesses are completely excluded. To my knowledge, what I've seen so far, it is not specific at all. So the employer is left to kind of create their own policy and word it the way they want to. So that in and of itself, I find is problematic.
So just like they mentioned on the website for the actual act, the new law encourages healthier work-life balance for employees in Ontario. But again, I would have to say one specific thing that they do talk about is we have to have a written policy about employees disconnecting. But if your employer and you are not having this conversation, if your organization has 24 or one employee, how do you work that out? They're very difficult. And I mean, a written policy, yes, it can be a provincial act, which is technically a law, but is it actually going to be practiced? And how will we practice it? And not everyone is working in a place where their employees are going to take the initiative to have people actually go forward with this, to actually write it and to have it reviewed. It's nice on paper. It's nice for the government, for their PR to actually say, hey, we're going to have something. Because working from home, people, I'm seeing people getting texts and answering their emails at all times of the day, weekends, there's no disconnect. But we need the employers to move forward. And we need to have really, not just our boundaries, but boundaries that are specific. And just like mentioned prior by one of the panelists, we have to be able to know what our rules at work are, because most likely you're not allowed to receive an email after work hours. Your work hours are from X to Z. And not everyone works in a place that will have an HR department so easy to find. I'm looking at people working service industry. Who's their HR at McDonald's? That's just an example. Who's the HR department at McDonald's? We can find it, but how do you get to it? And are they going to write an act? How do you go with that? And you need that confidence to actually tell them, to your employer, whichever your employer is, or whomever it is, all right, well, there's an act, so now you can't email me. Well, that can get tension. So I think it's going to be a work in progress. It's going to be a work in progress. It's going to be moving forward, but it's going to also take the employees to know what they're entitled to when they sign that contract, the collective agreement, if they have one, if they have that privilege, and the privilege to also disconnect, because we might be able to disconnect from work, but it doesn't mean that we can disconnect from school as well, from school, work, our private lives, whatever side projects we have, because we don't all just have 8 to 4, 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock jobs.
Yes, I agree with both of you. I think it is a work in progress. I think it's a step in the right direction that they're actually considering this, but at the same time, it's really so unique. Each environment, each job, they have their own culture. And how can we diminish or erase that fear of losing your job or not performing? Right. So yeah, so lots and lots of work needed moving forward for sure.
I just wanted to say, for those who are following us either through Zoom or on Facebook, if you have questions for our panelists, you can write it in the comments section, and we'll be able to ask them to our panelists. I've got, we're pretty much near the end, so we're gonna have 3 last questions, one for each of you. I'll go with the first of those 3 final questions. Start with you, Stacy. What does being a Black anti-racist advocate mean to you?
What does it mean to me? So it means always speaking up for your best interests and centering yourself as a Black person, including your intersecting identities, because they matter too. You know, calling people in when you can, educating people when you can, when you have the capacity. It is not your responsibility, but you could be an agent of change within your workspace. And if you have the capacity to do that, then by all means. But again, you know, you shouldn't feel like it is your responsibility, because it is, you know, it is a systemic and a structural issue that needs to be handled, you know, that's, you know, all the way up there. But if you can just create a more comfortable space for yourself and work towards that, then, you know, that's definitely being an advocate for yourself and the Black community. Setting boundaries for yourself as a Black person. Do not allow your employer to tokenize you. Do not allow them to use you for EDI initiatives without paying you, without giving you, without a benefit. It has to benefit you. The why. Why are you doing this? Right? Working hard only leads to more work. So you have to make, so for myself, I'm very passionate about it. So, you know, I'm very strategic about what I agree to and what I don't agree to, kind of thing. And it's always linked to my career progression. So what I'm doing, I'm certain that it's leading to my career progression, and not just, you know, they're just utilizing my labor to make them look good. And other than that, just caring for yourself, loving yourself as a Black person. You gotta love yourself. Loving yourself means taking care of your mental health, centering yourself, putting you first. You gotta love yourself.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Stacey. There's some very good suggested actions there that you provided. Absolutely, like as you're talking, like thinking about, yeah, you know, for myself, I work in the federal government, and luckily for me, the work that I do is, you know, with equity, diversity, inclusion. So that's my job. So so I'm able to advocate in that way with the work that I'm doing. And not everyone's able to do that, obviously. And like you said, it's not your job to inform or educate people. But I do believe, like, you know, if you, like you said, if you can, to be an agent of change, because it starts with, like, you know, those little, you know, work groups, you know, you and your colleagues, and having those discussions. And, you know, even working where I work and in the position I'm working in, sometimes it's really hard to drive some of those policies, some of those initiatives and changes down to like that middle manager. You know, so, you know, getting them on board is probably some of the hardest work that we do. So anyone who does feel like they have the capacity to do small things within the, you know, the team that they work within is it helps us, and it helps the majority. But yeah, as you said, it's not your job, so don't feel guilted anyway into doing stuff like that either. So my next question is from Muhammad Ali, and I would like to know, you describe yourself as an interventionist and a counselor. So I want to know a little bit more about what that work means to you, and how you're helping people.
So I would say agent of change, speaking out and advocating for those who don't have a voice. I'm working with older adults, some with dementia, some with any type of health issues. Their family members, their caregivers, they don't necessarily know how to discuss specific subjects. Not everyone has health literacy. So being able to talk about health, knowing about their health. So I guess I'm confident about this one. For me, being the social worker that I am is really combining my know-how, my knowledge and strategies that I've learned with time, and that I'm going to continue to learn with time, is all in all going to help people move forward with their goals and to support them during this little chapter of their lives. They might not remember who I am after I left the room. They might not remember me just because it's been a year, 2 years, 4 years. But if I was able to get them that little thing could be simply their next meal. It can be just transportation going home after hospital. Well, that was enough, and that's what they needed. And that's why, for me, that's what it means for me. It's to be an agent of change and an advocate for people who don't have someone to speak for and with them.
Nice. Beautiful. Virgia, so last question for you. And after that, we'll look, I don't know if we have any questions from the public, but we'll look at that. So for you, what does it mean, like being a Black professional in the mental health industry?
Thank you for that question. For me, I have the amazing opportunity to rewrite history. I have the opportunity to change others' perspective and even my own perspective. And I have the opportunity to walk along with people through their transformation, through their journey. And I, as both you said, I continue to want to do that. And it's amazing because there's so many stigmas out there. There's so many barriers, but if we have someone, and this is why I do what I do, to be the face of change, to be the face of, hey, it's okay to feel this way, you can recover, then I'm doing my job right, So I'm really passionate about what I do, and I'm so happy we have these conversations because it's going to spark thinking after this, and this is really what my desire is.
No, I love that. Rewriting history. I really love how you put that. So like those are a couple of things that struck out for me, like the rewriting history, the health literacy, and the agent of change. When I think about mental health and the intersection with mental health and anti-Black racism, I think all of those things come into play. So with the work that I'm doing, I'm hoping that I'm being an agent of change. And also with the work that we're doing with YBP and the conversations that we're having, I'm hoping that as a network that we're able to do that. And I think it's really important for ourselves to ensure that we get that health literacy. We understand what it means for us and what it means to be mentally healthy and what keeps us well. And in the workplace, I just think it's so important to be able to do that and to have the knowledge of how to do that. So this is one of the things that, we're hoping that through this discussion that people are learning the how. So how do I go back into my workplace? And if I'm in a certain situation, how do I advocate for myself? So we will be following up with some, websites and things like that. We'll put a few in the chat here on Zoom. We'll follow up on Facebook with some elements of, things where you can go. Off the top, There's like the Federal Black Employee Caucus. I know that they've developed an advocacy toolkit, self-advocacy toolkit. So things that you can do if you're experiencing anti-Black racism in the workplace. Well, what are your options? What can you do? So there's definitely that. And some of the things that we've talked about here. And, you know, sometimes like on face value, it seems so basic, but I think it is basic. You know, how you advocate yourself is not rocket science. It's just having the confidence and the ability to just take those steps and do it. So yeah, so I appreciate everything that you guys have said throughout the discussion that we've had. Thank you guys so much for being here. I know it's only 8:15 and we said the event's going to go on until 8:30, but we are going to cut off the Facebook Live and give 15 minutes to the people who are on the Zoom in case they have a question that they don't want to put on Facebook Live. Like, I mean, come on. There may be a few of those questions. So we're going to have to cut you guys off of the Facebook Live, but thank you so much for joining us. We love you guys and stay tuned for the next one. Thank you. But y'all stay here. Y'all on Zoom, you stay connected. Thanks.